In this video, we're going to learn how to subtract improper fractions and mixed numbers. So this is going to be very similar to adding improper fractions and mixed numbers. There's one exception that we're going to do is subtracting that's going to be a little bit different. But let's start with this first one. We're given two improper fractions, 8/5 minus 6/5. Notice they have the same denominator. That makes our life easier. And let's use the takeaway method. We did one problem on the number line, that was comparison. So we'll start with 8/5. So 8/5, take away 6/5. So you start with the first number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8/5. And we want to take away 6/5. So we're going to move back and take away the 6/5 from the starting point of 8/5. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And notice if we look at 0, our result is 2/5. Okay. Looking at the numbers, notice our denominator doesn't change. Okay, we're still dealing with fifths, and we end up subtracting the numerators. So symbolically, 8/5 minus 6/5 equals 8 minus 6 over 5, which is 2/5. Let's look at the next one. Here we have 4 1/3 minus 3 1/2. Okay, so notice we have mixed numbers. The fractional parts have different denominators. So there's a few things going on here. We're going to use the number line to get a general idea of the answer, and then we're going to use the algorithm. We could use the number line to do the whole thing, but it's going to get a little bit messy. So let's just think about what this means. So we're starting with 4 plus 1/3. Well, that would be, this is split into thirds. We're starting here. And we want to take away 3 1/2. So that means we need to take away both 3 and then another 1/2. So remember, 3 1/2 means 3 plus 1/2, but we're taking away that entire quantity. So we need to move to the left 3 whole units and then an additional 1/2 unit. Okay. Now moving the whole units is pretty easy. So 1 less than 4 1/3 would be 3 1/3. Which would take us right here. So this is minus 1. We could minus another 1. That would take us here to 2 1/3. We minused another 1. We're at 1 1/3. And now we've taken away 3. We still need to take away 1/2. Okay, and 1/2 is larger than 1/3. 1/2 would actually be to here, so it'd be a little bit to the left of 1 would be our result. Okay, so this is the general idea of borrowing and subtraction. So 1/3 we don't have enough to take away 1/2, so we could borrow from the whole number, split it into more pieces, and then take it away. Instead, just to prepare us for when we're subtracting signed fractions, we're going to use a method of writing as improper fractions first. Okay, and when we added mixed numbers, we didn't write as improper fractions. We combined, and then we wrote any improper fractions as mixed numbers and combined more. But instead, we're going to write as improper fractions just so we can see this spot. Okay, so we have, first let's start by writing them as improper fractions over here. 4 1/3 is 12 13/3. So there's 4 times 3 is 12 13/3. And 3 1/2 is 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7/2. So each whole has 2 pieces, 2 halves. That's 6/2, 7/2. Now we also need to write them with a common denominator. So the least common denominator of 2 and 3 is 6. So here I will multiply this by 2 over 2, 26/6. And here I'll multiply this by 3 over 3, which is 21/6. Okay. So we wrote as improper fractions, then we wrote with a common denominator. So this is all of the front work you have to do, but once you do this, it's easy. So 4 1/3 is equivalent to 26/6. 3 1/2 is equivalent to 21/6. Subtract the numerators and keep the denominator, and we get the result of 5/6. And that's equivalent to about where our answer looked like it was going to be. It was between 0 and 1, pretty close to 1. Okay, let's look at one more example. Here we have a mixed number minus an improper fraction. Okay, so let's just look at the picture, then we'll write it, the mixed number, as an improper fraction and subtract. So we have 2 3/5, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So here's 2 3/5. Okay, and say we wanted to subtract 11/10. Well, tenths are half the size of 5, so we could actually cut these in half until we have enough, and then subtract 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, I didn't even do that on purpose, and it's perfect. Okay, well, this is 1 1/5, 1 2/5. This is 1 3/5. And this is exactly halfway between. Okay, and let's do this using the algorithm, and you're going to see what this halfway between is. I challenge you to think about what that would be ahead of time. Okay, so let's write 2 3/5 as a mixed number. Is 5 times 2 is 10, plus 3 is 13. Okay, 11/10 is an improper fraction. I'm sorry, this is we wrote the mixed number as an improper fraction. This is an improper fraction. Their least common denominator is 10. This is 5 times 1. This is 5 times 2. So we only need to change 13/5 to tenths, and we get 26/10. Okay, so now we have equivalent fractions with the same denominator. Okay, we subtract the numerators, and we get 15/10. Okay, and then we can rewrite this as a simplified fraction. They each have a common factor of 5, so it would be 3/2, which is 1 1/2. So we wrote our answer as both an improper fraction and a mixed number. Okay, and notice, just to connect this idea, halfway between 2/5 and 3/5 would be 2 1/2, and 2 1/2 is half of 5, so that's why we got 1/2. Okay, so in general, when you're subtracting involving mixed numbers or improper fractions, change any mixed numbers to improper fractions. Okay, give them a common denominator, then subtract the numerators, keep the denominator, and simplify.